And so what we did next was the big deal. This is where it gets a bit dramatic. I realized that we were worth a lot, but all of it, really half of it at least, was tied up in the house and the other half was in retirement accounts. So even though we were worth a lot, we didn't have access to any of that money. So what did we do? We decided to sell the house. Hi everyone, it's Tina with Picture It Personal Finance, where I help professionals clean up their money lives so that they can pursue work they love. Today, I am sharing a story I committed to giving to you guys a few weeks ago, and that is the story of how my husband and I paid off our mortgage in 4 years. And then I'm going to give you some bonus story about why we moved from Littleton, Colorado to Springfield, Missouri. So with that being said, you will the best way for me to share this information really is by doing it in story form and kind of giving you a little bit of our timeline so that you can really understand what the motivators were. And I'm going to be honest with you, the story is a little bit depressing at times because it was a really dramatic and tragic time in our lives. But long story short, we were making really handsome income. We weren't living paycheck to paycheck because we had enough discretionary income to purchase luxuries for ourselves in cash for the most part. Every now and again, we were leaning on the credit card still, but generally speaking, the credit card we were using just to keep our credit scores up, if you know what I mean, because that was what we were taught to do. We didn't really have an emergency savings or anything like that because we hadn't really learned all of that yet. And we had definitely retirement accounts building up. So our net worth was positive, and honestly, we really just thought we were doing great. Right up until my husband received a phone call that his dad was in intensive care. He had an infection that had run the course through his body and it was not looking good. And so my husband went up to Montana, where we're originally from, and he went to go be by his dad's side. He was up there for a long time. I mean, this was a big medical problem. And so he stayed with his dad. He stayed with friends while visiting his dad regularly, working up from Montana, telecommuting at that time. And I was left home to sort of operate as a single mom in the time that he was gone. And I'll be honest, with the stress of work pressure and wanting to maintain the level of delivery that I felt like was required of me or that I expected of myself, I have very high standards for myself. And that was, it stayed that way even though we were in a tough family spot. We were in a tough financial spot, but I didn't know that at the time, right? So at that point, it was just a tough family spot. And after about a month of this, I got a hold of my husband and I was like, how long is this going to go on? I need you home. I can't handle this anymore. And he ended up coming home. Not 1 week later, we received the phone call that his dad had passed away. And I felt like such a piece of shit. I mean, sorry for the cuss language, but I have to be honest with you. I felt terrible. I felt like I'm not a great mom. I'm not a great wife. I'm not a great employee. Like, I just felt like I had failed in every way because I couldn't handle the pressures of what we were going through. And so I called my husband home right when he needed to be there most. That was the eye opener for me. That was when I realized we're not in a good financial situation, because if we had been, I could have taken leave. I could have taken leave and said, I'm sorry, my family comes first. But I couldn't do that. And I knew I couldn't do that because we had bills to pay. And while we had discretionary income, we didn't have the savings. We didn't have money to lean on. We just had that great credit score, which doesn't really help in these circumstances. This is when I started to look for Mr. Money Mustache. This is when I started to look for Dave Ramsey. This was when I found Dave Ramsey, not long after this. And so this is when we learned, okay, wait, people are debt-free. We can have emergency savings. The credit card isn't my emergency savings. What? I couldn't believe it. Paradigm shift. Got my husband on board and we started to really move. We were like, we will never be in this situation again. Throughout 2016, we got rid of our consumer debt. And we rewarded ourselves with a cash flowed vacation to Germany. I was so excited about that. It was such an exciting time. We were so pleased with ourselves. We felt so successful in that we had cleaned up our debt situation. And we had already made the decision, hey, we're going to reward ourselves with this trip. And when we come back, we are going to get our emergency fund up to 6 months. I think it was at like 2 months when we left for the trip. And then we were like, and then we had made such monstrosity payments on my car and that credit card that we were carrying a balance on, that we knew when we came back, we were going to make triple mortgage payments. Like, we had it mapped out. In order to do this, we had already decided we were going to discontinue any additional investing or brokerage savings. We were just going to do our 15% to our retirement accounts, and the rest of it was going to all go to the mortgage, and we were going to wipe that bad boy out. We were in a 30-year loan, and we had plans to pay it off in 7, and I can't tell you how motivated we were. While we were on the trip to Germany, this is in 2016, on the second to last day of the trip, the third to last day of the trip, we received the tragic news that my dad had passed away. And you guys, I was devastated. I mean, I won't go into the story of that. You can actually see the videos of the aftermath of me learning that and my bit of my grieving process if you go and look at earlier videos, because I share the information on YouTube. This was all when I started this channel. And so this channel has really been a chronology of me sort of capturing moments of our progress along the way. And when we got back, we were like, coming into money from my inheritance or from my dad's estate. And there was time where we were like, what should we do with this money? And then it was so super clear and obvious. Well, we'll stick to the plan, instead of we'll continue even while all of this was going on. And it's not like we received all of this inheritance that fast. I mean, there was stuff that had to be sold. There was a home that had to be repaired and sold. There was a lot of work that went into it. So over the next 9 months or so, we received big chunks of money that were part of the estate kind of coming to a conclusion. While all of this is happening, we're making our triple mortgage payments. And as this money's coming in, we're making those payments as well. And I have to tell you, it was so hard to get a check for $10,000 and then immediately turn around and apply it to the mortgage. Get a check for $20,000, immediately turn around and apply it to the mortgage, because you're putting these massive payments on your mortgage. And at the end of it, you still owe like $150,000 or $100,000 or $70,000. But the needle was moving so quick that there was no way we would ever not do that. At this point, we were just firmly committed. I believe in my heart of hearts that God laid it on my heart to pay off that mortgage back before my dad even died. I remember when we were paying off all of the smaller debts, and one time walking into my bedroom and seeing my kids taking a nap on our king size bed, and they were just littles then, and just this overwhelming gratitude and peace flooded my soul. And I just thought to myself, out of nowhere, I'm going to pay off this house and you are never, ever going to worry about not having a roof over your head. And this moment, this thought infused in me so deeply, that's really what led to the 7-year plan to pay off the mortgage. And that's also then what led to what, after my dad passed away and we started seeing all this money come in, there was no temptation. Well, that's not true. There definitely was temptation to get a new car or take another vacation at the end of, when everything was said and done. Those temptations were there, but not strong enough for us to deviate from the plan. At this point, the plan was set, it was solid. We ended up using my inheritance to get the mortgage down to, I want to say, about $36,000 in early 2017. And when you're making triple mortgage payments, and we wiped that out in another 6 months. So by mid 2017, our house was paid off. And honestly, I couldn't believe it. But now I'm really not loving my work and I'm really wanting to leave. And I'll link a video that really kind of expresses that very clearly that I recorded back then. And what I learned is that I wanted even bigger freedom. I didn't want just freedom to be debt-free. I wanted passive income, and I wanted enough money that I could leave when I felt it was appropriate and important to leave. And so what we did next was the big deal. This is where it gets a bit dramatic. I realized that we were worth a lot, but all of it, really half of it at least, was tied up in the house and the other half was in retirement accounts. So even though we were worth a lot, we didn't have access to any of that money. So what did we do? We decided to sell the house. But where could we go? I mean, it's not like Denver has cheap houses around, and we didn't want to sacrifice in our lifestyle. So we came up with this idea. We had moved to Colorado from Minnesota to be closer to our parents, and sadly, our parents had passed away, so we didn't really have to stay in Denver anymore. We weren't from Denver, and we knew that Denver housing prices had increased tremendously. Our house, when we bought it for $260,000. And we sold it for $480,000. We had so much money in that house. And so we were like, okay, let's do it. We are going to sell this house. We are going to take that equity out and we are going to apply it to good use to further our future goals. What were those goals? Well, the goal was the seed was already starting in me that I needed to find a new career path. I wasn't loving tech anymore. It wasn't for me. I loved the people, loved the team. And honestly, thank God, because that's really, I loved like the element of like working with individuals and having those one-on-ones. My favorite part of my job was having these individual relationships with peers and with direct reports. And so I knew I needed to find something else, a different field altogether that offered that. And the story of me becoming a financial coach is kind of entwined with all of this, right? But this is the beginning of this. This is the beginning of us realizing that if we sell our house and take the money out and move to a lower cost of living area, then we can buy another house outright and have leftover cash to get an investment property. And so that is exactly what we did. And I have videos about that. Now, the way that we did it wasn't so like, sell the house and buy 2 houses outright. It was like, sell the house in Colorado, purchase a duplex using a mortgage in the place that we decided to move to, which is Springfield, Missouri. And then while we're living in that duplex, look around and figure out where do we want to live, buy a house outright, and then take any of the remaining monies left over and then apply that to the duplex mortgage and be totally debt-free again. Along the way, we were tempted to kind of use some of those monies for something else. So we didn't pay off that duplex mortgage right away. And I have a video where we actually reached out to Ramsey Solutions. We're like, what do you think we should do? And they were like, dude, investment properties are part of baby step 2. So you're no longer in baby step 6. You're back at baby step 2. Pay that off. And I have a video about this that I'll link for you guys. But so that's exactly what we did. Then we just did the same thing. In 2019, we paid off that duplex. And then I also knew firmly in my heart now at this point, like I'm ready to be a financial coach. This is where I want to go and like, let's prepare for that. And so that's when we started to take the same sort of intensity that we used to pay off the first house. We then used that to pay off the duplex. And then we used that to build savings that we could lean into while I was building my business because, I did get an MBA, so I know it takes some time to get your revenues up. And so I imagined it would take 2 to 3 years for me to have a business that was capable of affording me a paycheck that I had gotten accustomed to at corporate. So that's it, you guys. That is what we did. And there's a few really key sort of like lessons in this. I want to make sure I get them right. So I'm looking down a little bit here. But the first one is have a plan. Have a plan. We wrote those plans out. We wrote down the steps it would take to pay off the house in 7 years. We wrote down the steps it would take to move. We wrote down the steps that it would take to pay off the duplex. Even in the moving, we had steps on where would we go and what qualified as a reasonable place for us to live. And we wrote it all down. And I am so convinced that that is an important element of success. Write down your goals, write down how you're going to accomplish them. You can tweak it along the way. And nobody says you can't use the eraser, okay? So just write it in pencil if you're that unsure, but write them down, okay? Next one is don't deviate, all right, foot and mouth a little bit because you can tweak the plan. But the point I'm trying to make there is when the money from my dad's estate was coming to me, I could have been sucked into those temptations to go do something grandiose, and we didn't. We stuck to the plan. We knew the house getting paid off was the most important thing. We clung to that, and we treated it like there was no other choice. And so that's what I mean by don't deviate. Yes, you can tweak the plan. You can have little detours and stuff like that, but generally speaking, you want to be, this is my path, this is what I'm doing, and this is it. Like, it's going down. So that is so important to me because life's going to throw you curveballs and there are going to be temptations. So just make up your mind before they show up. And then lastly, think big and get creative. Once I knew that I wanted passive income, my husband, I'll be perfectly honest with you guys, he's definitely way more of a creative thinker than me. But even he was surprised when I was like, I'm willing to sell this house because my house in Littleton was my dream home. Like, I still miss that house, you guys. The main point I want to raise with that is be creative, not like be willing to do big things, right? Be willing to make the dramatic play. Be willing to do something that's unexpected that other people will look at you and be like, that's crazy. I can't believe you're doing that. So that if we hadn't been willing to think big, if we hadn't been willing to do something dramatic and move to a place that we have never been before, you know, a lot of our progress would be slowed, and I probably wouldn't be a financial coach today, and I probably wouldn't be recording this video for you. So with that being said, that's our story. That's our big dramatic story of how we paid off the house quickly, why we paid off the house quickly, and how we ended up in Springfield, Missouri. I've got like several videos that are sort of attached to these, to this story, and I'll kind of link them in the description box below. But if you guys have questions for me and you're curious about any like really particular aspect of what we did, please message me below and I'm happy to clarify the story even further, because I feel like this is one of the more compelling things that I've done in my life that really inspires other people to act. And if it's gonna inspire you, except for you have like 1 or 2 questions, I'm gonna ask those questions so that we can make sure that you know what is the answer that can maybe help you to get your solid plan in place. I hope you guys are all happy, safe, and staying warm if you're in the north, because it's frigid these days. And I will see you all in the next video.